Despite the catastrophic death toll it has inflicted, Israel is losing on the ground and in the court of public opinion. So they're doing everything they can. Desperate acts of aggression to provoke a wider conflict with Lebanon, with Iran, with anybody, to draw in the US, to save them from the consequences of their own actions. And as Yemen shows, Butcher Biden is reporting for duty. So take note, Butcher Biden. The ancestors of the Ireland that you claim to be from disown you. Keep our country out of your mouth.
So that was Irish member of the European Parliament, Clare Daly, who has no F's left to give for what she's terming as Butcher Biden. She is sticking it to Joe Biden, saying that not only does she disagree with his policy vis-a-vis what's happening in Gaza, but she is telling him, like, basically, you're not Irish anymore. You don't get to be anymore, which is, I think, harsh, but perhaps warranted because the situation there is really rough. And she's not the only one, of course, who is upset with President Joe Biden. Recent poll, Economist YouGov poll, roughly equal numbers of Americans believe that Israel's military campaign against the Palestinians should be classified as a genocide. 35% say that it should be, 36% say that it shouldn't be, with 29% undecided. And among young voters and Democrats, two sort of core constituencies that he's gonna need in 2024, it is nowhere near as close. 49% say that Israel is committing genocide. Now, I don't know that 49% of young Democrats believe that he should be called Butcher Biden, but they don't seem to like his policy here. David, what do you think about it?
I think we need to come up with a new word other than genocide, because the fact of the matter is, and look, we have our disagreements on TYT about this repeatedly and with Cenk and whatnot, but the fact of the matter is there are 2 million Palestinians who are living in Israel proper who are not being killed or not being bombed. It is just the bombings in Gaza. And oh, by the way, there's a population there of 2 million, and maybe, okay, 40,000, worst case scenario, have been killed. That still leaves a lot of people who have not been killed. So to say this is a genocide seems absurd. And that also takes away from the issue. And the issue is, yes, we can agree that Israel should stop the military aggression. We can agree that Israel should not be haphazardly attacking Palestinians in Gaza. But there's got to be some way we can also broaden out the context here. For example, Israel just said, hey, we'll have a ceasefire for 2 months. Hamas return the hostages. Okay. Hamas didn't want to do that. So what does that say about Hamas? And again, criticize Israel all you want. And I'll be the first to criticize Israel and what they've done in Gaza. But there's also got to be some criticism of Hamas, whether it's you're a politician in Europe or in Ireland. And fine, you want to criticize Joe Biden for having his thumb on the scale over Israel, that's fine. But to call him Butcher Biden and for younger Americans to suggest, oh, Israel's engaged in a genocide shows how uninformed I think a lot of people really are about the Middle East. And given that, yes, this is a complex conflict, it is not easy to follow and understand, even for those of us who have lived there or been there or followed this closely. But again, this just seems to underscore how quick we are in our society in this day and age to slap a label on something that has no tie to reality.
I think that is true, that we do like to put labels on things. I think some people would say, though, like, don't we need something to draw attention to what a lot of people see as a horrific situation that doesn't appear to be getting better even months into it? But I don't know Clare Daly's politics on everything. I don't know what she has said about Hamas. I would guess that she is critical of Hamas, I would assume. And I understand the numbers that you're throwing out, but we also know that more than 1% of the population of Gaza has died. Like, it's a small area. But hypothetically, if that was America, that would be literally millions of people that would have been killed if it was at that same scale. So you're totally right about people outside of Gaza, but I mean, the devastation inside of Gaza, I think, is somewhat indisputable at this point. Not only in the number who have died and the number who have now been set up to perish, not even directly from the military conflict, but from the destruction of infrastructure, the destruction of access to electricity, water, food.
I agree with all that. So let's call it Gaza's side. But when you start saying it's a genocide against Palestinians, no, because there are Palestinians who live all over, whether it's Gaza, the West Bank, Israel proper, Jordan, Egypt, Palestinians all over the place. And to suggest that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians, then you start to venture into language that makes you wonder, well, that's not right. Are people saying genocide because they have some sort of bias or something about Israel that they can't stand? And that takes us away from the issue. The issue is, yes, Israel has behaved horrifically in Gaza. And maybe there is some effort to flatten Gaza, and we should all speak out about that. But the moment we start making this about something broader, about Israel having some sort of desire to wipe out every Palestinian, it draws us into the area of absurd and takes us away from the issues that we should be focused on.
So I think that we might disagree about that, but I want to focus on Clare Daly, where she was more focused on Joe Biden rather than on the labeling of the sort of conflict it is. She appears to be implying that while obviously he's not the one who is perpetrating the violence on either side, the US is contributing to it in terms of the weapons that we're sending over. And he doesn't seem to be like using whatever I think built-in influence the US could have over the conflict. He doesn't seem to be wielding it too much, at least not in a way that's visible to most Americans. Do you think that that is a fair criticism of Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think you can argue it both ways, that maybe, Joe Biden doesn't have the power over Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a lunatic. And so no matter what Joe Biden might say or do, maybe he doesn't have an influence over Netanyahu and what Netanyahu is gonna do in Gaza. But I would like to see Biden perhaps be a bit more critical, or propose perhaps squeezing Netanyahu in some fashion, as opposed to appearing to be a lapdog for this right-wing government that even, look, people forget that there were hundreds of thousands of people marching in the streets before this began. They were marching against Benjamin Netanyahu. Most Israelis cannot stand this man. Israel society, left-wingers, they're a huge portion of Israeli society who do not like Netanyahu, but that seems to sort of get lost. I wish Biden was playing more to that part of Israel's domestic population, as opposed to just saying, oh, we're just gonna go along with whatever the Israeli prime minister wants because he's the prime minister of Israel. No, that should not be the US position.
Well, and there's obviously a lot of frustration inside of Israel amongst many Israelis, many perhaps who already were predisposed to not like Netanyahu, that they don't like how this is being conducted either. And he could face a difficult political future. So that is certainly possible. Look, I don't have any control over what Israelis do in regards to their government or their prime minister or anything. I would just say that Joe Biden, even if he doesn't agree with Clare Daly about her assessment of what's going on in Gaza, I think even if just for his own personal, pragmatic, political future, he needs some of these voters. And so he needs to convince them that he's at least trying. Even if he can't single-handedly change the situation, we are still shipping weapons. And in the absence of some sort of gain on the other side of that, getting something policy-wise, I think a lot of people are gonna see that as complicity.